Greetings, movie lovers. This is The Long Road to Ruin, and I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight is a very special night, as you may know if you've been following the show for a while. Tonight, since about September-ish, Sean Comer, the co-host of this show, the man who started it all with me here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, went on hiatus. He went into the woods to seek a better life, to live deliberately, and you know, after his transcendental experience, he is back. And so, without further ado, here he is, folks, the rhyme style man himself, Mr. Sean Comer. How do you do?
Folks, I'm Sean, you're not, and above all else, I am home. God, it feels so damn good to be back. 6 months feels like a lifetime.
I apologize. The last time you went away and came back, I had all kinds of music for you and everything. It was a real big celebration. I couldn't get it together this time, so
Mark.
No soundtrack.
Mark, it's okay. You know what? Going away for as long as I did to deal with. Right now, I'm just happy enough that after this many months of having so many great people like Jason Offutt and Jesse Starcher and Robert Winfrey and several others filling in at various points in time, you know what? I'm just happy that I was still welcome back. And in fact, I requested this show in particular, this very franchise that we're doing, because at one point a few months ago, I was hearing all the news that was coming out of the chutes for what is now what I'm going to call the 5th movie in this line. And I just went, that's it, Fox. You just done it.
Before we hit the throttle and go forward, a couple of things. Obviously, tonight, as people who are tuning in, first, we are in fact covering the 2005 and 2007 Fox Fantastic Four franchise with Jessica Alba and 3 other people. We will be talking about them. We will also spend some time talking about. They messed up here. They should have just called the Ultimate Fantastic Four, since that's what they're basing it on. And I might have had less hatred for what this movie is turning out to be. But we're going to talk about this latest installment coming out this summer, this latest version of the Fantastic Four, which appears to be based on the Ultimate comic book. But before we get into any of that, let me once again thank Benjamin Cologne for his outstanding title card artwork. Absolutely love it. As I said, it's right up there with The Dark Knight, and not just because he included my daughter in it, but just, he seems to do a great job in capturing the spirit of both, the participants in this podcast and the franchises themselves. So, first shout out goes to Benjamin Cologne. We always appreciate your artwork here, and you outdid yourself with this one. But I do also want to thank Gavin Napier, Christopher Evans, Benjamin Offutt, Robert Winfrey, as always, and everyone else Jesse Starcher, everyone who participated in Sam Mercati, in guest hosting on The Long Road to Ruin, especially around the holiday time where things were kind of screwy with me and my schedule. We had to mothball a show or two. But everyone, came around and pitched in and participated in the show and kept it going while Sean was away. And, your efforts were greatly appreciated. And definitely most of you will be back in some capacity to join Sean and I for a future installment. But now that that's out of the way, Sean. So you wanted to talk about these 2 movies, and it is a great way to kind of get back into the saddle again and get ourselves reacquainted with the show and each other and all of that. But what specifically made you decide that this was going to be your comeback show? Why these 2, and let's face it, these 2 lazy, mediocre at best movies? why did you why come back to these two movies?
What frustrated me is the fact that I really want to explore a phenomenon that I've never been able to exactly, succinctly explain. And that is this idea that Hollywood seems to have that when it ventures to adapt a popular property from a number of media, whether it's from a book, from a television show, from a video game, from a comic book, it's almost like they have this ridiculous ego about it that they insist that everything else is beneath them and their ideas are going to instantly and inherently be so much more effective than the source material they're gleaning from simply because they're their ideas, because they are the almighty elitist film industry. And the Fantastic Four have been such tremendous victims of it, because the simple fact is, and by all means, Mark, let's take the gloves off, throw the sticks down, and go at this in center ice if you think I'm wrong here. The simple fact is, by this point, a combination of X-Men, Avengers, and Guardians of the Galaxy especially, as well as another movie that I'll get to a little bit later in the show, have proven that this isn't necessarily, or at least it shouldn't be, an impossible, unfilmable concept. The fact is, they've done team-ups. They've done elaborate special effects-filled team-ups. But they were team-ups that really were able to grasp the essence of the characters they were going after. Whereas, in this case, after years of waiting, after over a decade of waiting, and a number of people being attached to the project, we finally got two movies that got a proper budget. They got some star power. They got major studio backing and promotion. What we got by the time we got through the second movie was the Fantastic Four, pretty much in name only. And now, we're about to get another movie. Oh, Jesus Christ with cupcakes. Are we going to get a third Fantastic Four movie? We're going to get a movie where they've adapted it from an era of Fantastic Four that is, at best, largely polarizing. And they're also taking one of Marvel's most iconic villains and turning him into a Gamergator. Oh, God.
All right.
Save us, Disney. At this point, you just might be our only hope.
Let's get into the first movie here. And I'm going to talk about this the way I talked about some of the other franchises of late. Like I did with Star Trek and some others. I think in both cases, Fantastic Four and Rise of the Silver Surfer, what you had was a belief in the property itself. It's the WrestleMania theory, okay? The WrestleMania theory is it doesn't matter what matches you put on the card, people will buy it at WrestleMania. The brand sells itself, okay? So even if you've got Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, which nobody wants to see except maybe some little kids, rather than Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar, and somewhere out there Pat Mullen is banging his head into the wall, it doesn't matter because people will buy it because it's WrestleMania. People will go see the Fantastic Four. And mark my words on this one, these were not flops. They might have been critically panned, and rightly so, but this first one had $100 million budget. It made $330.6 million worldwide. So not a flop by any stretch of the imagination. Somebody asked me the other day, they're like, I don't understand why they made more Fantastic Four movies when the first one sucked so badly and is so universally panned. And I said, because it made 3 times its budget, that's why. I think with these movies, there was a belief at Fox that if they went out and put a PG movie, a non-offensive PG version of the Fantastic Four out there, people will come to see it. Kids will come to see it. Comic book fans will come to see it because it's the Fantastic Four, and it has name value. It has name recognition. And with that said, since there was no care involved, they put out a lazy movie. This was...
but you know what? The rating really doesn't matter. The Fantastic Four doesn't need to be in point. In fact, really, absolutely should not be R-rated.
I wasn't implying that the PG was a bad idea. It was what it was. There was, maybe you can speak to this in a little bit, but there was a conscious effort to make sure that it was PG and not higher. They were appealing to the widest possible audience that they could, which is what you want when you've got a PG movie. Which again is not an inherently bad thing. It is what it is. I'm calling a spade a spade.
Well, and the thing is to be perfectly fair, it's a movie that actually manages to get a lot of things right along the way. It really does. It gets plenty of things right. It's just the problem is there's two major things that they completely forgot to add to the recipe, and instead.
Well, hang on one second. This is what I'm saying, and then I'll pass back to you. I don't think the movie's inherently bad. I actually think if you don't know anything about the comic book and you don't know anything about the Fantastic Four and you just happen to watch the movie, it follows and flows just fine. The problem is it's a lazily written movie. It's as if they got around and said, we need to put out a Fantastic Four movie. We know something about what these characters are supposed to be. Just do a paint by numbers superhero flick and get it out there. And that's how it comes across.
No, I disagree. And believe me, I'm going to get much more into my reasons why. But for right now, the most basic reason I disagree is the fact that we went to that movie wanting to see the Fantastic Four saving the Earth and, by extension, probably the rest of the galaxy. What we got, to put it in a more contemporary context, I could only describe as Modern Family with superpowers.
So what specifically? I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. I just said it was not a bad movie. It was just lazy. What about that do you disagree with?
Okay, let me run this down before we get into really talking about the story. This movie does, I repeat, definitively does get a lot of things very right. For starters, it's a gorgeous-looking movie. It looks the way you would expect a film adaptation of this book to look. The special effects are absolutely spectacular and worthy of the scope of the story. The casting, despite what a lot of people will say, with one notable exception, I think is actually pretty much letter perfect. Ian Grofeld is just right out of the imagination of Jack Kirby, Reed Richards. He nails the straight-laced tone of Reed. He's the patriarch figure. Hell, he even wears the gray in his hair just so that he really brings him to life. Michael Chiklis, absolutely perfect casting as the thing. In fact, I'll come right out and say it. I wish they would have gotten him for the version that's coming out. I believe it's, later this year or next year? It's later this year, right?
It's this summer, yeah.
Okay. I really wish they would have brought Chiklis back as the thing for the movie coming this summer because, again, absolutely nailed the character. Chris Evans, and I've gotten a lot of pushback on this from a lot of people, the guy is the ideal Johnny Storm. He gets it. The only real... Well, actually, correction. One more I got to get to before I get to the mistake. Julian McMahon, believe it or not, is actually an outstanding actor and could have been a superb Dr. Doom, except for the fact that the script failed him at every single turn. The only casting they really got wrong was Alba. And please, don't go all pedantic on me and say, oh, well, you know why she was in the movie. She was in the movie because boobies. Yes, I know because boobies. But there were any number of other perfectly capable actresses that, number one, you could have gotten and pulled a decent performance from, who would have been maybe a little more akin to Famke Janssen in X-Men and little less Eva Mendes in Ghost Rider. But it's also the fact that she doesn't really look age appropriate to be Johnny Storm's older sister. It just looks wrong. It just looks off. So otherwise, you've got an ideal cast, movie's well shot, great effects, and I'll even give them credit for nailing the dynamic of the Fantastic Four in terms of how they interact with one another, bounce off each other, and even bicker incessantly. But that's where the movie starts going wrong, is the fact that for about 90% of this movie, the internal bickering of the Fantastic Four is all we really get.
Yeah, that was one of the things I noticed about it. Is that instead of dealing with the characters a little, instead of dealing with really spending some time with Ben Grimm and his coming to grips with him being the Thing, and it was almost every. I felt like the aspects of the characters that make them interesting, they beat each one of them to death. Well, first of all, I don't think anyone understood who Sue Storm was, but so Jessica Alba kind of had no character other than she was a nagging woman. But like Reed Richards, it was like Marvel gave them notes on these characters, and it was like, okay, whether they sort of weave these into interesting characters and dynamics, they just beat them to death. It was just like, okay, so and then the other part of that was, instead of just writing good dialogue and incorporating it into a well-told story, they kept using one-liners and hackneyed language. Johnny's such a hothead. It's like, oh, Reed, always stretching. Like, oh, Jesus Christ. Sue Storm, I just want to be seen.
Well, and again, look, I get that you have to get that infighting across, but basically what we got about 2 hours of superheroes with nothing to fight except for each other.
Yeah.
Because Doctor Doom is a non-factor throughout the entire movie, and when we finally do get to see his full-on villainous superpowered turn, he's a shadow of everything, even the faintest glimmer of what those of us who remember from the comics really hoped he would be. I mean, I get that in terms of the comics, he's overpowered, cartoonish in his dialogue, downright mustache twirly, and he's very hard to translate in a palatable way to the big screen. I get that. However, you took somebody with quite literally every possible tool at his disposal to rule the earth, and you turned him into a smarmy executive who can manipulate electricity, and that's his only power.
Well, I didn't mind him. I didn't mind, them adapting him in sort of a, more realistic way where he's, the head of this company. My problem was that he spends half of the movie seeking revenge on the people in his company and whoever was preventing him from taking the company public and all of that. And he had another villain with no plan. You get some
has no plan.
You get some sort of inkling that he doesn't like Reed Richards, and he wants to and he wants to get at Reed, and I guess maybe he wants Sue Storm back. I don't know, but yeah, it's it's what he does is extremely weak, and again, you're absolutely right. Here's one thing I'll tell you: you're absolutely right. instead of seeing the Fantastic Four be superheroes and do stuff, you have a sequence where Storm is playing practical jokes on Ben Grimm, and you have sequences of Doctor Doom fighting everyone but the Fantastic Four. And the only time the Fantastic Four ever does anything is at the end of the movie. This is part of the reason why people don't like the movie, by the way.
And, allow me to contrast this in terms of how the writers really completely missed the mark with characterizations with a movie that I feel really does get it. Or rather, I should say, two movies that really get it. Bryan Singer's X-Men movies. You have a movie that worked because whereas they had a very A-list, accomplished, diverse, classically trained cast that probably did not grow up comics fans, you had people who were willing to bury themselves in everything that the characters were supposed to be. And as a result, we got such great turns as Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen becoming downright iconic, respectively, as Professor X and Magneto. There was actual effort for them to invest themselves in it, just like most of the cast really displayed some effort to throw themselves into playing the characters that they were, even though I would dare say the characters they were playing probably weren't as challenging as the two that I just mentioned, or, say, Jean Grey or Hugh Jackman.
Well, they were caricatures. That's the problem, is that instead of writing characters, they just wrote caricatures with bad dialogue.
And you know what? In that sense, they were really being somewhat true to the original Stan Lee and Jack Kirby creations, in that, initially, going clear back to their origins, they weren't exactly, the deepest puddles in the marsh. They, for the most part, they really were caricatures. They were very much what they were in the movie. But, again, the problem was that was offset by the fact that the books actually gave the characters something to do. They gave them a nemesis. And you know what? Allow me to come right out and say it. Folks, I got news for you. There's hope out there. We already got the perfect Fantastic Four movie. It was called The Incredibles because Brad Bird took this concept and, yeah, for obvious reasons, because he couldn't call it Fantastic Four or even model it too closely on Fantastic Four, he flipped and flopped some things around, but I'm pretty positive that he realized that the dynamic of the family was pretty much that of the Fantastic Four. And throughout the entire movie, you had them coming to grips with themselves, coming to grips with their powers, really coming to accept their identities and their greater senses of responsibility. But at the same time, they also had a looming foe who was edging ever closer and ever closer throughout the movie to bringing them to their end. You had Syndrome. Syndrome, in that sense, was a pretty damn good Doctor Doom.
I want to stop right here for a second. There were elements of this movie that they tightened up the script and kind of did some rewrites. Actually had some potential. The idea of, and this comes right out of the comic book. Reed Richards promising Ben Grimm that he was going to cure him, and
yep.
I want to say at some point in the comic book he actually had a cure and kept it from him. In that Reed, and part of Reed's defect of character to a degree is that he recognized that the impact of the Fantastic Four and the benefits of having a Fantastic Four were for him in particular, and there was something to that, and they touch on it a little bit, but it's a setup for for the old giving up the powers to realize you need your powers and go get them back again, which was done so easily there was no drama to it. So there was that. They really missed the boat with Jessica Alba and Sue Storm, which forgetting about her abilities as an actress, and whatever else. Sue Storm, somebody described her as like the perpetual damsel in distress until later on in the comic book where she becomes a very strong character. They touch on it, but they don't ever really explore it. And it's just, and again, it's and I've told you this before on other podcasts, there's so much focus on the love story that there's not much else left to the movie. It's like, and they do it even worse in the second one. The thing that made the Fantastic Four interesting was not Reed Richards and Sue Storm's relationship. It was there. Yeah. It was something to talk about, and at times you could highlight it throughout the decades of that comic book being around. But it wasn't the thing that drove it. Well, the thing that drove the Fantastic Four and what made them interesting were the space adventures. And I don't want to get into this right this second, but at some point I really want to come back to the boat that they missed, especially by rebooting it as fast as they did. But the boat that they missed with this, and I'll say this much: instead of showing stupid Chris Evans playing pranks on Michael Chiklis, what they should have had was once they established, once they do the bit on the bridge, there should have been a montage of them fighting their Earth-based, ridiculous comic book villains that we don't need to see in a movie. There should have been a montage of them taking on the Mole Man, and people better at this can throw out some names who have a better memory for it than I do.
Okay, fine. Since you offered, yes, I will throw another one out there. Thank you very much. I realized why they wanted to go with Dr. Doom right off the bat in terms of him being the most recognizable foe, the one at the forefront. I know, and I say they should have kept that. I'm just talking about in terms of a montage. But go ahead. But the big bad in the whole movie should have been Dr. Doom. No, but you know what? And this is something else that other movies have done. You know what? Some movies are able to go out there and just successfully run with this concept that you don't break out the classic baddie right off the bat. You save that one. At that point, you're like the Spin Doctors coming out to play a concert, and you're opening with two princes. Where do you go from there?
That's a whole other conversation.
Well, okay, but hang on. Here's what I'm getting at. Here's a choice of someone you could go with. Someone from the classic age of the comics. Someone that has never been brought to a Marvel movie. Submariner. Never been used. Okay. He was an early Fantastic Four nemesis. Why not? Why not bring him along and possibly maybe, and again, hindsight being what it is and everything, and Disney wouldn't perfect this until years later and all that, but why not just introduce Dr. Doom in a post-credit scene so that all of a sudden, holy fucking shit, Doom's going to be in the next movie?
Here's what I would have done. I would have had a sequence where you show them fighting, saving the Earth over and over again from different random Earth-based villains. Nothing cosmic yet. And while this is happening, Dr. Doom is doing his thing, edging closer and closer to getting after them. But have him fight the Mole Man, and have him fight, then show him fighting, I don't know, Fin Fang Foom, the Impossible Man. Nobody cosmic yet, because what they could have done was in the next movie, then you do Galactus, but you go to a third movie and you do the trial of Reed Richards, which was a great story, and it would have been a nice taking off point after the second movie, and then maybe you do or you flip flop. I mean, you do the third one is the Skrulls, and then the fourth one is Galactus. But the point that I'm getting to is you have to get the Fantastic Four off of Earth.
Well,
okay. That was the most important thing with them, and I think again, the studio sort of missed the boat, not really knew what it had in its hands. Is that they're not the Avengers. The Avengers are. Go ahead.
But in the meantime, let me make a point here about Doom though.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have a guy who was hideously disfigured in college and had kind of a lifelong rivalry with Ben Grimm and Reed Richards, stretching clear back there. He's rescued from death by Tibetan monks, and so hones the disciplines, that they teach him that he ends up ultimately controlling them and becoming so powerful and so multifaceted that the man eventually at one point escapes hell. What? Why do you pass up an origin like that in favor of just making him a douchey CEO?
Because the douchey CEO is more relatable to a wider audience.
Fuck relatable. Escape hell.
I'm just telling you how it works, man.
And it's not the first movie to have done this.
But again, but you got to remember, Sean, and we've been doing the show long enough that a big part of the show is recognizing, how studios think and act, and I'm telling you, they didn't want to weigh this thing down too much by getting too far out there. Not the first time around, especially if they knew the second time around they were going to bring in some sort of planet-devouring monster. I guarantee you there were people at Fox going, is there a reason we have to have the Silver Surfer in this movie?
Oh, God. Galactus. And that's another one where if you look at what his actual tragic backstory is, that's another one that feels so needlessly thrown aside. We're talking about an intergalactic explorer who survived the Big Bang and basically gestated in hibernation into a fucking god. Into a planet om-nom-nomming god. We reduce the equally tragic tale of Norrin Rad down to a few sentences long exposition dump.
Right. Instead of just opening the movie, with Galactus coming upon his planet and just doing Silver Surfer's origin right then and there, give us a few minutes of that. No, but they spent too much of the movie doing the fucking wedding, and whining about that, and trading powers, and there's this subplot of Johnny Storm needing to find love. This is what I mean. And we talked about, like I said,
because she walked in on his bachelor party. Derp. Next on 2.5 Men.
So that's the thing. We talked about this. I don't remember which movie franchise we were discussing it, but I said Hollywood gets so caught up in, it's like Hollywood is run by a bunch of lonely men. That's all they can think to write about is boy and girl in love, and there can't be another story out there, that's interesting. And I'm talking about like a superhero movie. It's like that can't just be enough. They have to we have to make them relatable, and how do you make them relatable? Well, you give them human relationship problems, which I tell you, as a 13-year-old boy reading comic books, boy, was that something I really linked into.
Well, but you got to give them credit. Again, that's another one where Disney actually did a pretty decent job. And they have
The Incredibles, though. The Incredibles, was about age. It was about coming to grips with your responsibilities. There was so much more going into it it's why it's a little hard when people say, "Oh, it's the Fantastic Four movie that never was." It's like, well, these characters are Mr. Fantastic has a whole other set of issues going on than Reed Richards, the smartest man on earth.
Oh, I know, and that wasn't necessarily what I was referring to. I was actually referring to the MCU.
Mhm. Okay.
And how they've taken those relationships and they've managed to thread those into the plot.
Okay, so let me go back to my initial question here, since we have been running this way. This is how you and I haven't talked in a while, because once again, we are all over the place.
Oh yeah.
I said, I'm gonna take it right back to where we started. I said that this was a lazy paint by numbers movie, not a bad movie, just lazy, and they didn't really take care to do something interesting with it, and you disagreed.
Well, again, I disagree with the lazy part. I mean, maybe as far as the script goes, but that's what makes it all the more disappointing, is the fact that...
When I say lazy, I wasn't referring to the vision, because I agree with you. I think it looks great.
I know, but I mean, what I was getting at was the fact that it gets so much right, and all it really needs is just for the script to nail the characters and to really get the essence of them and to pull off the God knows it's difficult task of somehow finding a way to make someone as pompous and over the top as Dr. Doom actually translate well in a live action modern setting. The thing is, it doesn't seem like they even try.
So let me ask you a question. What is it that what do you find wrong with the movie? Because again, where do you stand on this? Let me ask you a different question. What people have said about it is that these two movies are horrible, and that Rise of the Silver Surfer, this one's bad. Rise of the Silver Surfer is atrocious. So weirdly enough, if you look at like IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and whatnot, Rise of the Silver Surfer got a better review than this first one. So where do you stand on at least the first one? Do you think it's a bad movie? It's a good movie? It's a mediocre movie? And depending on your answer, what is it about the movie that it gets right or wrong?
If you're a Fantastic Four fan, by all means, stay at least 150 feet away from all possible flippable tables while you watch this movie, because it will not be anything you have ever hoped that a Fantastic Four movie would or could be. It just isn't. You might be able to forget about it for a little bit while you revel in the things that it gets right, like the dynamic between Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis, Ian Grofut as Reed Richards, the few moments where it seems like Julian McMahon almost kind of, sort of is trying to get Dr. Doom right despite the horrible script. But unfortunately, after that, you're just not going to get much out of it, because you're going to get these saviors of the galaxy not really saving anybody. They're just standing around with each other until this greasy CEO comes along and decides to half-ass pick a fight with them, and then promptly
that's the hilarious part. There's the bridge sequence where they actually do save some people, and you can see why why the people there are cheering. But at the end of the movie, you have no idea. Dr. Doom picks a fight with the Fantastic Four, and they start destroying half the city. And if you're one of the citizens watching this, you have no idea why. Dr. Doom isn't trying anything to anybody else. He picked a fight in public. That was it. And at the end of it, people are cheering the Fantastic Four like they accomplished something. They're just as big a problem.
But the other pathetic part is, Doom gets disposed of in about 10 minutes because he forgets, because one of supposedly the world's most brilliant scientific minds forgets what happens to steel when you heat it and cool it rapidly.
Yeah, it's lame. To say the least, it's lame.
It's something that, my God, every single comic book nerd who watched this movie and grew up loving the comics and loving that Doctor Doom watched that final fight and the way it ended, and the screams of bullshit could be heard from the Baxter Building to fucking Asgard. It's a movie about superheroes with nobody to save and nobody really threatening them. But
yeah, there's no stakes. There was no stakes here. You know, if it's at least in like Thor, right? You know, people thought Thor was sort of a mediocre movie and it goes way too fast. At least the Destroyer is just, you know, is there not just to destroy Thor, but to wreck everything in his path.
Pretty much.
You know,
yeah.
You know, Thor is trying to save human beings from the Destroyer.
Well, I mean, so that's the thing, is it has the foundation largely right, but it doesn't do anything to try to build a compelling, exciting script on top of it that really invests in you, leaves you with any investment in anything that's going on the screen. It's just simply, ooh, look at the pretty pictures. On the other hand, I gotta say, I think that people are a little more forgiving of Rise of the Silver Surfer, because whereas Fantastic Four was a half-assed adaptation of the origin story, Rise of the Silver Surfer is an adaptation of arguably one of the most famous and beloved comic arcs in Marvel history.
All right, so let's. Anything left to say about this? We didn't talk about the plot at all, but essentially the plot of it is the origin story. You know, it's part one, they get powers. Part two, Reed tries to reverse the effects, accomplishes it, actually gets it done.
Well, you also forgot
somewhere in there. But somewhere in there, Julian McMahon wants to know what you don't like about yourself, and you know, and then there has to be a fight, and in the midst of all of him and Sue, Reed and Sue are falling in love all over again for no good reason.
Well,
that's it.
You also forgot about
that's the whole middle of the movie.
You also forgot about the 30 or 40 fucking minutes in between in which the soundtrack should have been replaced by the Benny Hill theme.
Yeah. And way too much time spent with Johnny Storm being a womanizer and all of that. You know, it's just, you know, it was a game.
Richards is out of toilet paper. What's he gonna? Oh, he's reaching across the hall. Derpy-doo.
There's so much focus on Chris Evans. And again, this goes back to my line about...
Ben's asleep and Johnny's got shaving cream. I see a collision course for wackiness.
You know, this goes to my theory about how Hollywood is run by lonely men.
Oh, God in heaven, I just realized. I take it back. I ripped on the wrong awful CBS sitcom. Awkward science nerds, stupid, brainless gags, cheap humor, low-hanging fruit. Fuck me sideways with a reach around. It's not 2.5 Men. It's the Big Bang Theory. I
knew you were going to say that. You know I disagree, but whatever. This is not the time nor the place. All right. In any case, I think we beat this movie enough. There isn't that much more to say about it. Let's get on to 2007's Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Oh, God.
In this one, one of the subplots of the movie is that, you know, Reed and Sue are trying to get married, and it's very hard to balance, you know, the semblance of a normal life with trying to be superheroes. But again, this is another situation where you never get to see them superheroing anything. There's again another movie where they don't actually save anybody or do anything. You know, Reed is more obsessive compulsive about his work. Ben is more accepting of him being the Thing because he's got a blind girlfriend, which is fine. And Johnny Storm is a hedonist who needs love. There's the movie for you. And amidst all this, you have the Silver Surfer running around preparing the Earth for to be eaten by Galactus, which is a big cloud of smoke. And then you have the archetype of the evil military guys who don't trust Reed. So you gotta throw that in there. And of course, we couldn't do the movie without fucking bringing Dr. Doom back.
The Fantastic Four do not fear a low-pressure system over Cleveland.
Yeah. Let's talk about Galactus first.
Look, let's just get that one out of the way right now. Galactus, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Marvel lore, is simultaneously one of the most feared, awe-inspiring creatures in all of the cosmos, and also one of the most goddamn ridiculous things Jack Kirby ever conceived. I realize you would have, again, a hard time really adapting the look of this character effectively to the big screen without him looking ridiculous. Because
that's what I wanted to talk about.
Because for all his powers, he did look ridiculous. But goddamn, he looked like the only threat he would pose would be maybe raining out a Detroit Tigers game.
Let's talk about some of the options they had with Galactus, because I've been thinking about this since I watched it the other day. By the way, let me throw this out there. Rise of the Silver Surfer is so bad, I couldn't find a digital copy of it anywhere. I actually had to watch it in pieces on DailyMotion.com. I mean, I could have probably gone to a movie store or Walmart or something and found a copy for like $5, but I didn't have that kind of time and I didn't feel the need to buy it. I mean, like we're talking. It's so bad it couldn't even occupy digital space on Apple TV or Verizon or Amazon Prime. But I digress.
The greatest gripe with this movie, though, comes down to the fact that the first time out, okay, they tried to do their own somewhat original take on the origin story. And, okay, face it, that sucked. This time out, they decided to go the much easier way. And went, okay, story, straight from the comic books, all of it, pretty much laid right out for us. All we got to do is just trim away the stuff that's not going to translate well or interfere with pacing on the screen, take out some of the unfilmable stuff, cut it for time a little bit, and hey, there we go. We have a movie. This has worked in the past. You know, this is how we got The Dark Knight. This is how we got Batman Begins. This is how we got The Avengers. This is how we got several Spider-Man movies. It's the art of adaptation. In this case, this is more like taking your 7-year-old special fucking snowflake son out to the park to teach him how to hit a baseball. You stand a few feet away, you try tossing him the ball, and he misses it every single time. A few times, even damn near clocking you in the daddy bag with the bat. And so eventually, you walk up to the kid, you set up the tee in front of him, you put the ball on the tee at a reasonable level, and you say, just stand back and proudly wait and say, okay, son, let's take this a little bit easier. We'll take this slow. You can do this. You can hit this. The ball's just sitting there. Just wind up and swing, and okay, you just hit yourself in the crotch with the bat. It is a level of fail that shouldn't exist because it's not. This one wasn't that difficult. It's the Galactus trilogy. It's 3 stories, 3 relatively simple stories from the Silver Age that you could have told. That was what they were trying to do, as a matter of fact. But Goddamn, Fox. Goddamn. If Bryan Singer's attached, it's just not worth trying, is it?
Well, I did say that about the first one. It was like they just put no fucking effort into this, you know. Again, I've been trying to get out there. They went with, it was almost as they were like, oh, the focus here is on the Silver Surfer, who they did a fine enough job animating and all that. But it was like, oh, well, you know, Galactus really isn't in the movie, so we don't have to do much with him, and we'll save some time by just making him a cloud of smoke. Which, to me, defeats the whole purpose of having Galactus in the movie in the first place. I mean, if you're going to do that, then make this movie into two parts, and don't bring, and make Galactus essentially Smog. Just allude to him and then bring him in the next movie. They could have done a couple of things to sort of take away some of the silliness of Galactus's look. They could have made it a god. They need to have made it an entity of some sort. Mm-hmm. To me, it doesn't work, unless Galactus is sort of a living, breathing, talking menace of some sort. But sort of you don't want to make him look like Unicron either. He's just a big ass dude running around in space.
But the thing is Galactus is a galactic explorer who basically survived the Big Bang and gestated in hibernation into a fucking living demigod.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They could have made him a dude, but a dude in a ship, and and the ship is what devours the planet. Something along those lines. There was a way to tweak it so that you could still have the essential Galactus without making him look like a silly man in a hat.
I mean, it's proportionally and metaphorically speaking, not being literal here at all. You needed to make him Cthulhu, and you made him Stitch.
So that was and then of course there isn't enough Galactus in the movie. You need to make that's the thing. Like the beginning of the movie should have had Norrin Radd sacrificing himself to save his planet, so that you could get an understanding of what Galactus was all about. They tried to open it up with sort of a mystery, but that's the problem. As an audience member, you know what the mystery is already. You know that the thing creating the big circles in the planet or whatever else is the Silver Surfer, and you know why he's doing it. So, like, it was a stupid mystery to begin with. Moving away from the Silver Surfer and Galactus, I complained about this before, but again, they made one of the subplots in the movie that this is a team trying to figure out how to balance having a normal life with being superheroes, and they never show you the team having being superheroes. They open up with a wedding and a bachelor party and all of that, and then they're right into the Silver Surfer storyline, and the whole movie you've got Sue whining that maybe they shouldn't get married because how are they supposed to raise kids and all of this. I just want to get your take on that and like how you would have handled it if you had a studio executive telling you had to include this in the movie.
How I would handle what? I mean, Sue wondering how we're supposed to raise kids in this world.
If a studio executive is telling you have to have some sort of conflict in between Sue and Reed, how would you have handled it?
I would start by don't handle it like a goddamn sitcom. I mean, let me put it to you this way: if the previous movie was The Big Bang Theory with great special effects, this was How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
I mean, I would be looking at it going, it's saying, well, look, do you want these people to be superheroes? Or do you want them to just be the bickering Bickersons who can turn invisible and stretch for mild perfect elasticity. You know, what do you want here? Because, I mean, quite frankly, I don't see the point of making a superhero movie where nobody is really doing anything super, and where you're injecting this ham-fisted dialogue, but how are we supposed to bring kids up in this world, and then debating about their goddamn wedding, when all things considered, somebody, I don't care if it's Johnny or Ben or Sue, should be shaking the shit out of Sue and asking her, priorities, woman, do you understand them? World about to end. World gonna end. Wedding wait, world end.
Yeah, they really did they continue to just make her a nagging, selfish woman, which that's not Sue's character at all in the comic book, not even close.
No. Well, I mean, it's because, and here's the part where I may be going to sort of kind of jump on the stereotypical internet bandwagon here. It's because for some reason in a lot of superhero movies, the internet just has no idea how to write women. Or not the internet. The writers just have no idea how to write women any other way. For some damn reason, and it's gotten to the point to where it's become so pervasive throughout film and even to a certain extent television that's why so many people who cover film and movies are just so fascinated by the freak show that is Joss Whedon writing women folk who use their thinky brains.
Now, I want you to stop for a second. I want you to stop and listen to me, because I'm going to say 2 words to you, keeping in mind what you just said about how Hollywood writes women so ineptly. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to take a moment to react, and then let's kind of close up this discussion of Rise of the Silver Surfer, because, again, there isn't that much to talk about. And we want to spend the last half hour of the show talking about the reboot. But here, 2 words. You ready? Listen up. Ghostbusters 3.
Okay, you want my reaction to Ghostbusters 3?
Well, you know why I'm saying that, don't you? With the all-women cast.
Yes, I know. I'm aware they have an all-female cast, and you know what? I have no problem with none.
Oh no!
Well,
Then you're missing my point. Because I don't care that they're casting it with all women. I care that you have terrible male writers who don't know how to write women, and you've decided to cast this movie with all women who you're going to write badly.
And you know what? I don't know. To be honest, I'm really on the fence about how to feel about that. Because on the one hand, I'm a little bit encouraged by the fact that it's once more bringing together Paul Feig and, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Kristen Wiig, and Melissa McCarthy from Bridesmaids. I think that really gives it a little bit of a glimmer of potential, because obviously that was hysterical. And if you're not going to go with the heart and soul of Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis's creation, then you might as well at least go with somebody else with a different direction, proven to have produced something funny in the past. I'll say that it's maybe not exactly entirely my cup of tea, because I'm going to go ahead and say it. My nostalgic love of the original Ghostbusters limits me to pretty much being okay with considering the first 2 movies and the PS3 and Xbox 360 video game to be pretty much the perfect iteration of the series outside of the animated show.
Let's get back to Rise of the Silver Surfer. Is there anything else left unsaid about this thing?
Oh, I wasn't. Well, yeah. I was gonna finish it by saying that just to round it out succinctly, that it's just that the cast is mostly not filled with women that I find particularly funny. Kristen Wiig's okay. I've never found Melissa McCarthy as absolutely hysterical as everybody else does. Sorry, I don't. I'm not that familiar with the other two. I think that if they had gotten Tina Fey and Amy Poehler on board, oh, hell yeah. I'd have been down to see this in half a heartbeat. But I don't know. I reserve judgment because in this case it's an all-female cast being written by a guy who's had some success writing a comedy that was already centered on a female ensemble cast. So we know he can do it. We'll just see if he can do it in this context. But yeah, getting on to this thing that Fox is calling Fantastic Four. Why? I sum up so much of that movie in that one dragged out syllable. Why? Why you go with an ultimate story? Do you not know?
I can answer that question, and I've been thinking a lot about this. They rebooted sort of. It was a soft reboot, but a reboot nonetheless. The X-Men franchise with First Class, and of course the theory behind that is we want to do as many movies of these as we can. We need a younger cast so that we can keep them around for a while. The younger cast tests better with audiences, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these corporatisms for why you go with young people in your movies and not older people, which is what like half the comics are based on, which was elder folk. So why the ultimate storylines and why a younger cast for the Fantastic Four? Because they want to put them, if not actually in the X-Men universe, but they at least want to follow suit with what was successful in the X-Men universe, and that is, 4 young people as these heroes. And so,
But the universe sucks.
The other side of that is with the Ultimates origin. They get their powers by teleporting into the negative zone, which is I believe how they're going to do it in this one. And I'll give them this: it's a little bit more believable that they would teleport to a place that would alter their DNA and then send them back all screwed up, than 4 people stealing a space shuttle and flying it into space, and then being bombarded with cosmic rays. So, for modernization purposes, for testing purposes, they've already got a sequel plan for this thing for 2017. So, this is a cast they want to keep around for a while. So that's the answer to that question. Why are they doing the ultimate storyline? Because it suits their purposes all the way around. And I'll tell you, as a comic book reader, I didn't read any of the Ultimates. First of all, I haven't read comic books in a very long time, and when I did come back, all I pretty much stuck with was the Hulk, and now I'm reading the Thunderbolt series with the Red Hulk. But regardless, even if I had been reading comic books when these things came out, I would not have been interested in the Ultimates retelling of these superhero characters. I'm also, and this is the conversation that we have on the WrestleCast all the time, and that is, I am about to be a 40-year-old man. I am not a teenager, nor am I a child. I act like a 13-year-old at times, but I am not one. But when you're marketing to the audience that you feel is going to spend the most money, you market towards kids. And what do kids have what are kids these days going to identify more with? The Jack Kirby version of the Fantastic Four or the Ultimates version? I'm going to go ahead and tell you it's the Ultimates. So my initial reaction to when I found out about this movie was, first of all, I didn't realize it was going to be based on the Ultimate Fantastic Four, number one. Number two, I wouldn't have known what the Ultimate Fantastic Four was if I had tripped over it. all I had heard was this thing about, appeared to be Randall and what's his face from Clerks, accidentally get Dante, getting superpowers, and that they were fighting a blogger named Doom and all of that, and that's not entirely true. From what I've read, go ahead.
Oh, I've heard the whole thing with Doom has been more or less confirmed by not only the studio but by the actor playing him.
To a degree, I don't think it's as hokey as you and I were once talking about offline. I think it was, he's still a rival of Reed's. That there is at least to a degree some level of competition between these two, and and that's what leads to the conflict between them. Beyond that, I don't know. But
so we have no categorical denial that Dr. Doom will be the scourge of 4chan.
The only other thing I'm going to say to this is, I at one point didn't even know if I was going to go see this thing. Now I'm at least curious. Between seeing the trailer, which got released recently, finally we got to see some footage of this, and doing some research on it, I said, okay, clearly this is not the Fantastic Four that I grew up with, or that I would even want to see. But I am curious to see what they're going to do with this thing, and so at the very least, they've piqued my curiosity, and that is the best thing I can say about what's coming up in August.
If you wouldn't have conspicuously labeled that trailer as being for Fantastic Four, I would have had no idea. What the hell? No, seriously. There is next to nothing in that clip that tells me this is a Fantastic Four movie.
No, it was a very modern, super serial superhero trailer that tells you absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but you know what? We've seen super serial trailers before that at least gave us an indication, hey, this is a movie about Iron Man. This is a movie about Thor. This is a Spider-Man movie. We get something at some point. About the most we really get out of this one that really, absolutely, 100% says Fantastic Four is we get a fleeting glimpse of Ben Grimm.
Right.
I
don't even think we see Reed Richards' stretch in this, do we? We certainly don't see the black kid turn into the Human Torch.
And I'm sorry, folks. I'm not going to let this go. You made Dr. Doom a hacker? Unleash the Doom Bronies? For the lols?
All right.
I mean, is the goddamn doofus going to be prancing around in a Guy Fawkes mask?
All right. I'm actually replaying the trailer now because I want to see if I miss anything. I have to mute this. Give me a second. God damn it. Okay. So we have the 20th Century Fox logo, right? Marvel logo.
Yeah.
Okay, cityscape, mountainscape. So far, this could have been The Hobbit for all I knew. Shot of a house going into space. Then up here we have a car on a dirt road. All right. Then we have a nerdy kid breathing, and then we had a shot of what looked like the transporter, and then from the people of Day of the Future Past, military table. Shot of Reed walking around some sort of place there. Sue Storm looking at computer terminals. Shot of Ben Grimm playing baseball and Johnny Storm working on a car. All right, this summer. And they're putting on their space outfits. Walking in a... Let's see, okay, it's gone wrong. A shot of Bane's plane. Something that looked like the Thing. More of them climbing Mount Doom. Oh, okay. we actually did see a half a second of Johnny Storm turning to fire and Reed Richards stretching his arm. And that's it. That's where the trailer ends. August 7th.
I would have loved if they would have forgotten to put the title on there and just forced the internet to guess which movie it was supposed to be.
You know, look, if one could say, okay, what did we learn from listening to this episode of Long Road to Ruin? And that is that try as they might, Hollywood, I think, doesn't really understand, you know, or has been unable to thus far capture the spirit of the Fantastic Four. I think it's just viewed as another superhero team, and you know they fall back on traditional cultural nods and themes to make these movies without really knowing what these characters are about or what made the book popular. And while they've grimmed up and darkened and rebooted this Fantastic Four with new, younger, hipper characters, I don't know if any of what I've just said is going to be any different. You know, instead of making a lighthearted picture like they did with the first two, they've made this one very dark. But, you know, just because something is dark doesn't necessarily mean you still understand who these people are supposed to be. So we'll see. We'll see how it all turns out. But I think that's the great tragedy of the story of the Fantastic Four, is that Roger Corman was the closest one to getting it right.
Well, I will, in terms of people who actually did a Fantastic Four movie, yes. I will still maintain that I would love to see Fox or Disney or Sony or whoever down the road has the rights just make a money cannon and fire it at Brad Bird to talk him into doing a Fantastic Four movie, because he's demonstrated that he clearly gets the way it's supposed to look. And the thing is like so many other franchises that Fox has taken on in terms of comics, almost gets it right several times. Almost. I mean, the first movie, it so many things were going so well, but then they just couldn't nail the story. Or to go back further than that, Daredevil. Overall, got some things right. Got a lot of things right, actually. Trouble was, they released the wrong cut of the movie. They decided they wanted to release the PG-13 cut, whereas the R-rated version was far, far better. It mostly gets the X-Men movies right, but I think, again, you can chalk that up to the fact that they put Bryan Singer in charge of them. And, you know, at this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that almost nobody except him should be allowed to touch the X-Men under almost any circumstance. He seems to be the only one that can really get the formula right. It's just so frustrating to see them try and see them halfway have the right idea. But again, like I said, you know, your special snowflake 7-year-old rears back with the bat. He's keeping his head down. He's got his eye on the ball, and he's bringing the bat around. And all of a sudden, just as his swing is starting to level off for some reason, he drops it 90 degrees and bashes himself in the balls for some reason.
Before we go, I want to reiterate something I said before. I kind of got trampled on in you and I being so, you know, excited talking to one another about this. But
yeah.
I wish they had a little bit more faith in the series and tried one more time to right the ship before writing it off and starting all over again with the Ultimates version here. Like I said, I wish they had done a third movie and done the Skrull, you know, a Skrull invasion of Earth and ended it with the Super Skrull as, you know, as the big bad. You know, I would have liked to have seen the Fantastic Four go into space. You know, especially, you know, after being inspired by their thing with Galactus have them, go out there to see, what other cosmic entities are out there and see the Watcher and all of that. I would have liked to have seen Fox, take the Fantastic Four off of Earth for a little bit. And even if they didn't do the trial of Reed Richards because they killed Galactus at the end of the second movie, maybe you do a version of the Secret Wars with the Fantastic Four, in the Beyonder. I think that there's so many. That's the problem, is that they gave up so quickly on the Fantastic Four that they left so much on the table. I mean, it isn't like Spider-Man, where they used up a lot of what was good in his books. They used Doctor Doom twice. And it's such a weird thing, because with the X-Men movies, they at least tried different things and they brought in different characters, and there seemed to be some desire on Fox's part to mine as much of the X-Men franchise as possible. Whereas with the Fantastic Four, it was like, we bought this thing, but we don't know what to do with it.
Well, even when you had Doctor Doom, no Doombots, no mind control, no technopathy, no Doctor Doom escaping hell, no Doctor Doom playing puppet dance with Tibetan monks, no Doctor Doom crashing a wall and someone asking him, I know it's supposed to be Spider-Man, but just go with it. Why don't you just use a door, and him quipping back, what, like a peasant? None of that. None of the really sad origin of Galactus. Instead, he is the scourge demigod of the Weather Channel. Bow before my 70% chance of precipitation and quiver in fear.
We're saying all this, but all I can think of are the people who got mad that the Superman Man of Steel movie was too grim. It's like here we are wishing for a weightier, heavier Fantastic Four movie, and then when DC try it with Superman, everyone goes, "What the fuck? This is the most depressing thing I've ever seen."
Here's the thing about that, though, and here's really where the balance fails. As my good friend Cole pointed out to me at one point, Marvel with superpowers. DC writes gods. Fantastic Four, if ever you were going to pick a property that strikes a balance between those two, it would seem to be that one, both in terms of humanity versus gods, and in terms of having human beings with these exceptional powers to defend the Earth against the invading forces of the cosmos. This would be the property to do it with, like this and the Avengers. But that just gets ignored because instead we get a live-action, slapsticky domestic drama about people with superpowers.
Right.
Even hearing those words come out of my mouth, it sounds like I should be slapping on, "From the people who brought you Selfie, Blackish, and Fresh Off the Boat."
I was going to say, if they were going to do it this way, they shouldn't have casted Jessica Alba. They should have casted Jennifer Aniston.
That wouldn't have been a bad choice. I seem to remember, I think actually Cole and I were talking, and we were, I think he actually asked me at one point, okay, who else would you cast as Sue Storm instead of Jessica Alba? I think it was Sue Storm we were talking about, and I threw Charlize Theron out there. And he said,
you're being serious, sure.
And he said, okay, well, that's maybe a little too good of a performer for this movie, but good choice.
All right, let's wrap up here. We've got, in 2 weeks, we'll be back on our regular Thursday date, and we'll be finishing up the Rocky series, which people know is what the very first franchise that we tackled. This is where we learned we shouldn't go more than 2 episodes of anything. We did 2 episodes. We did 2 movies per episode, and then by the time we got to the third one, we said, fuck it, let's just do Spider-Man instead. That's about what happened. So we're going to finish up with Rocky. In March, continuing our look at superheroes, we're going to look at Blade and the Crow. In April, we're actually going to have 3 episodes in the month of April. We're going to be looking at the Tom Clancy series in 2 parts, because quite a number of movies. And then before the month of April ends, we'll be looking at the movie Darkman, which gives me the opportunity to say over and over again, die, Darkman, die. In May, around the time the Avengers comes out, we'll be looking at the Iron Man trilogy, and then we'll be finishing off the month of May with the Highlander series. After that, over the course of the summer, Fury Road's coming out, Genesis is coming out. I think the Fast and the Furious comes out this year. So we'll be looking at the Mad Max trilogy, the Terminator trilogy, Smokey and the Bandit, and more. There's a whole bunch. We got a whole bunch here on the list. So can continue to come back every other Thursday opposite the Metal Hammer of Doom for the Long Road to Ruin. Sean and I don't plan on taking any more hiatuses in 2015. So it'll be a very exciting year for us. Outside of that, next Thursday's Metal Hammer of Doom, I believe we will be looking at the new Blind Guardian. So check that out. There's a new WrestleCast up where we talk about Triple H's appearance on the Stone Cold podcast and more. So go ahead and give that a look-see on thecasualheroes.net. Sean, what's new in Coma World?
Oh, boy, I got a lot that I got to get through. So bear with me and do like I am and have a cup of coffee and a Pepsi Vanilla throwback. First off, let me just say, if the headline Japanese army troops have built a giant Star Wars snow sculpture doesn't make you come a little bit, you fail nerd. They apparently erected a 50-foot Darth Vader.
Those crazy Japanese.
I have never been more proud of the Japanese. and to put it in perspective, these are the people who gave us Godzilla, Kenta Kobashi, and porn not meant for mortal men. I have seen some things. Anyway, to get kind of the sentimental stuff out of the way and to kind of drop character just a little bit, thank you so much to everybody that kept in such great touch with me while I was on hiatus, taking care of a lot of stuff that I just couldn't put off anymore. And most of these people are probably never going to hear this show, but I'm going to go ahead and name names anyway. Thank you to Scarlett, Allison, Anne, Alexis, Cole, Mark, Jason, the Roberts, Jesse Starcher for a great co-hosting run that I had on From the Cheap Seats not all that long ago toward the end of the NFL season while Teasley was getting moved. My good friend Michael Carlson, Elizabeth Sexton, Brandon Jones, you guys are some of the best friends anybody in the world. Not just, and I stress that, not just colleagues, not just broadcast partners, not just business contacts, but some of the best friends that anybody could ever ask for. It's meant the world to have that kind of support, and it feels great to be back here in front of my speakerphone again for 2 hours just talking about movies with my best friend Mark on a Friday evening. In the meantime, one of the things I was working on while I was gone that really got me fired up again was, yes, we were at last very soon going to have a website. It was meant to actually launch today, but the fact is, I'm moving. I'm actually between Sean caves right now. And I'm going to be finishing up my move here in the next few days. I'm going to go ahead and call a date of 1 week from today, 7 days. You can check back at 12 p.m. Eastern Time at radulichandbroadcasting.blogspot.com, and that is going to be the home, the kind of placeholder home of our new kind of little web nexus. It's going to be where you can find back episodes of every one of our shows. You can find information about your favorite personalities. You can connect with us and give us feedback that way. And also, for the first time, I'm very proud of the fact that we're going to be adding written content to our endeavors. I've assembled a pretty good initial team of bloggers that are going to be helping us out. I'd like to introduce a few of them right now. Michael Carlson is going to be writing regular MMA-related content, probably at some point right alongside Robert Winfrey. I can't wait for that. My longtime good friend, one of my best friend of over a decade, Ann Alberti, is going to be joining us as a music review columnist. Cole Marentet is going to be giving us a lot of regular comic book reviews and analysis. In fact, God bless him, that guy's been a workhorse. He's got a backlog of something like 5 or 6 pieces, just ready to go already. I'm so damn impressed and so thrilled to have him on board. We've got Andrew Graham, who is going to be writing columns. A fascinating idea for a column that's going to be breaking down action movie fight choreography. His first 2 columns, in fact, are going to be tackling the very first Street Fighter and very first Mortal Kombat movies. And it's from the perspective of not only a gentleman and a scholar, but also a lifelong martial artist as well. In addition, I'm going to be writing about, well, probably just a little bit of everything. In fact, I plan on resurrecting my old music column, Bring Life Back to Music, which is going to be an album-by-album career retrospective of some of the artists that I love the most, written from a fan's point of view. That's meant to really touch on what it is about music that keeps so many of us coming back for more and more, and what it is that touches so many people so deeply. But in the meantime, I, for a change, do actually plan on this being my last podcast for about 2 weeks. But as Mark said, this is the last major hiatus either of us is taking for a while. Aside from the planned stuff, like taking a few weeks off every year for Christmas, the next time that I go away for a long, long time, just to give you guys some kind of a prophetic idea, when the time comes that I decide that I'm ready to review the Mass Effect video game trilogy, the Jeff Buckley album Graced, and finally the Shawshank Redemption. Well, the Shawshank Redemption is probably going to be my very last podcast. Otherwise, I don't intend on going away for a long time anytime soon. I love this. I've missed it. When the time comes that I decide to do Shawshank, that'll be kind of my point when I've decided I've done everything on this that I want to do. I've helped build Radulich and Broadcasting Network all I can, and I just kind of want to step back and work behind the scenes and do other things. But until then, I feel like I'm right back where I belong. And God, when I think about all the movies we're finally going to be getting to over the course of the next 12 months, God, is it exciting. So that's about it. Otherwise, the Long Road to Ruin has been brought to you tonight with absolutely no commercial interruptions by the Nick Diaz Kitty Jiu-Jitsu Dojo. Call today for your free assessment and quarter sack at
209-634-5789. That number again is 209-634-5789.
All right. And with that said, again, welcome back, Sean. We'll be back in 2 weeks at our regular time, Thursday at 9 o'clock. In case you're wondering what happened tonight, it's unfortunately we had to move it a day because of Sean moving, and then we had to move it back an hour because I did not get out of work on time. But in 2 weeks, we'll be back in the saddle. That's not a work day for me. I'll be off, so there's no there should be no reason why we should have to move the show at all. So Thursday, 9 o'clock, 2 weeks from yesterday. For Sean Comer, I am your mandated reporter. Be well, be safe, and behave.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie
Starring everybody
and me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily.
Hey, a movie!
We can watch it all develop.
Starring everybody
And me, we'll take the world and set it on its ear. Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.